You know who I am. The overconfident boss fails at an $800,000 project because he fired an indispensable employee. First of all, this didn't happen to me. I was with someone when he got a call about this situation, and then he told me this story. She is priceless. All names have been changed to protect personal information and privacy. To understand this history, it is important to know that the UK has a system for preserving ancient and significant buildings. If a building has historical value, it is called a protected building, and the rules for its renovation or maintenance are very strict. I will have to be vague in my descriptions so that the participants cannot be easily identified. My friend David specializes in a very narrow area of construction. He repairs and restores buildings using a very old construction method that has not been widely used for several centuries. All of his projects involve protected historical buildings. Work was required on a first category building. This category means that the structure is of the highest cultural value and is considered an important national heritage. Civil works were carried out by the main contractor, the company ACC Ltd. One part of the work was extremely specialized. The contractor's managers didn't know who could do the task, so the architect gave them a list of qualified people. The contractors chose my friend because he could get to work faster than the others. On the 5th day of work, the owner of ACC Ltd., the company's main contractor, arrived at the site. He began to loudly wave his authority and behave like a loud windbag, Mr. Carter, according to David. David just did his job and ignored him. Mr. Carter ordered one of the carpenters to bring him coffee. The carpenter left. Mr. Carter continued to walk around and complain noisily about the delays, which he said were costing him a fortune. 15 minutes after the carpenter disappeared, Mr. Carter approached my friend with a question. "Where is this damn tree with my coffee?" "I don't know, go and find out." "I'm here just for this work." He points at the walls. "I don't work for ACC Ltd. I don't care. Whether you are an employee or a subcontractor, you still work for me, so go find my fucking coffee. First of all, I don't like the way you talk to me. And secondly, my contract with you includes only these walls and nothing more. I'm definitely not a snoop." "Oh, you don't like the way they talk to you? Yes? Which subcontractor do you work for?" "Not for anyone. I am self-employed. I work alone." "Fucking hard worker, and you still dare to talk to me like that? Do you know who I am?" To him, "You know what? You're fired. Get out of the site now." "Fine. Get it in writing. Get out. Just get the fuck out of the facility." David took out his phone and started recording. "Okay, I'll leave. I just need confirmation that you told me to leave." Mr. Carter grabbed David's hand, which was holding the phone, and shouted into it, "Get off the site, you stupid idiot. You're fired. If you're still here in 10 minutes, I'll kick you the fuck out." "Okay, no problem." He collected all his tools and left. As he was leaving the facility, he was met by Mark, the site manager, who, ironically, was carrying coffee for the boss, said with a smile, "Are you leaving already, Dave? So early? Damn carpenters," jokingly. "No, your boss just fired me. Our contract is completed. Sorry, buddy." No, wait, I'll sort this out. Wait, please wait." David left. Mark was terrified because he knew something that Mr. didn't know. Carter. Only 7 people in the UK were qualified to do the job. All of them have a queue, and only David was free now. By the time he got home, he had 12 missed calls. This was 2 days ago, and all this time, it has not worked. David said he would return, but only on the condition that he was paid for the extra days, and the boss personally apologized sincerely. I met with David when Mark called him to say that the boss was apologizing, but he was currently abroad, so he could not apologize in person. David also told me that he called other specialists to warn them, but they all received calls the next day asking them to do the work. Nobody agreed. Everyone was completely busy. David also called the architect to warn him. In such situations, some unscrupulous contractors try to cheat and perform poor quality work. David intends to stand his ground, payment for all missed days plus a personal apology. He is confident that he will achieve his goal. I said that I would pay anything to see this apology in person. Update 1. Mark called to say that Mr. Carter instructed him to threaten legal action if David did not finish the job. Mark was very embarrassed and apologized. David reminded him that he did not quit on his own, and he has proof that he was fired. Mark called again and said that Mr. Carter will apologize in person on Friday. Can David start work tomorrow? David said, "Ille, yen." After the threat of legal action, the conditions changed. Personal apology before resuming work. Additional payment for missed days, payment of the full contract amount in advance, before the start of work. All of this must happen before Thursday, which is the last day he can start and still finish before the next project. If he works on weekends, there will be just enough time. I asked him why he didn't demand a huge extra payment for the fact that this man turned out to be such a scoundrel. He replied that it looks bad if you take advantage of a situation when the company is running out of deadlines. This is not accepted. I think one of my friends is a 16th century gentleman. A small clarification. I misunderstood David when he said that only 7 people could do the job. He meant 7 other companies except him. These are small companies. So, he says, there are probably only about 20 people who can do the job. Still a small number, but not as comically small as 7. I apologize for the misleading information. Update 2. Unfortunately, it looks like there won't be an apology. David learned that the blame for not informing Mr. Carter was told about the situation in advance by Mark, and he was fired. David contacted the Director of Operations, ACC Ltd., right-hand Mr. Carter, and said that an apology was no longer required as he had no plans to return to work. The Director of Operations apologized for everything and offered to very generously reconsider the payment. David told him that he was only considering returning to work out of personal sympathy for the former site manager. Since he is no longer there, David sees no reason to return. The Director of Operations said he would contact David later, but did not specify why. I asked why David didn't say something like, "Give him his job back, otherwise I won't come back." David explained, Mr. Carter is too petty and weak to allow a master to dictate terms to him. The company itself must decide to return Mark. If I tell them to do it, they won't do it. David noted that Mark does an excellent job, but he is already 61 years old, and finding a new job 4 years before retirement will not be easy. Now I respect David even more than 3 days ago. Update 3. It's 2 a.m. We've just returned from the pub. While we were there, David received a call from Mark, who had been fired. This afternoon, David informed the architect of the situation. The architect contacted Mark and told him about a company that needed a manager. Mark called David at approximately 9 p.m. I had to listen to the conversation, hearing only one side. I must have looked ridiculous, excited, as if a whole beehive had fallen on my head. Then David told me everything. Mark called to thank him and find out what kind of drink David liked so he could give him a bottle. He hasn't gotten a new job yet, but he has a meeting with the company on Friday. The architect's recommendation seems to carry weight, so he's optimistic. At first, David refused. "I didn't find you a job, the architect did." To which Mark replied, "But it was you who started all this and told the architect that I was fired. Thanks to you, I will never have to deal with that vile asshole again." David didn't specify who he meant by the disgusting moron. We'll have to guess. David said his favorite drink is Whiskey Cardu Gold Reserve, but he will accept the bottle only under 2 conditions. Mark will get a new job. Mark will come and drink this Cardu with David. It seems that the cute Arctic fox who did a titanic and long job of describing this saga is as if a toad is not involved in the consumption of whiskey. As Maestro David poetically put it, back off. You can buy yourself a drink. All good news, hopefully, except that no one will see that idiot Mr. Carter, will eat his humiliation and apologize. I've been waiting for this moment so much. And by the way, I found out that David and Mark know each other outside of work. They are both involved in charities in the same city. They have different groups, but they often work together. Update 4. ACC Limited's Director of Operations called David to offer to return Mark and generously renegotiate the payment. David said that they had already missed the point. Now there is no way he will have time to finish the work before starting his next project. The remaining work will take at least 11 days to complete, if everything goes smoothly. Even if you work both weekends, there are only 10 days left until the next project. It's too late. I wish I could be a fly on the wall to see how Mr. Carter report the news. Many people ask what David does. If I say what kind of work this is, it will be too obvious a hint, to the point that it will be possible to find out his real name and address. Sorry. The reason there are so few of these specialists is because it takes 5 years to simply reach a level of competence, and at least 9 years to become a master. When performing work, the presence of at least one master is required. Update 5. Bad news. Mark didn't get a new job. He met with company representatives, but they decided not to hire him. The reasons are still unclear. David is going to meet with him on Sunday to discuss everything. It is clear that David is terribly unhappy about this, although it is not his fault at all. Mark said he plans to file a claim for unfair dismissal. I thought it would be a win-win situation, but it seems that this doesn't happen in life. Update 6. News about the fired Mark. The situation turned out to be not as bad as we initially thought. Looks like we misunderstood what happened on Friday. David spoke to him yesterday. The company he met with on Friday doesn't really hire him on a regular basis. That's true. But he was offered a fixed-term contract for only 18 months to work on the construction of a distribution center. Not great, but on the other hand, the salary is a little higher than in the ACC. Besides, yes, the contract is only for 18 months, but it's better than nothing. There is a chance that the company will extend the contract if another project appears. A small clarification because there may be some confusion. For us, contracts that are concluded for a certain period are commonplace. In fact, they are then simply extended or not extended. But in Western countries, this is not the case. People there work mainly on unlimited contracts, and fixed-term contracts are extended extremely, extremely rarely. Update 7. David found out that they were inviting a Bulgarian to do the work. He smiled widely as he told me about it. David assumes he knows what will happen. There is a similar but different technique that was used in Sofia on 19th century buildings. David believes that this person will use it. It looks similar, but two very important materials are different. David decided to wait. He plans to let the Bulgarian finish the job and get paid. After this, David is going to ask the planning department and the client to check two components. If a Bulgarian does not know the English method of the 15th century, he is using the wrong materials. This will require taking everything apart and starting over. The requirements for such work are incredibly stringent. And I shouldn't wish for this, but I really want it to happen. Yes, I'm a petty person. Many people ask how David knows if the Bulgarian did the job correctly. David may find out soon enough, since there are only a few suppliers of one of the required materials. If a Bulgarian contacts them, David will be informed about it. David's words: "In this narrow topic, we all know each other and gossip like old women. If the Bulgarian does not contact the suppliers, David will leave everything as is, until he is informed that the work is completed and the Bulgarian has received payment. David doesn't want to put this man's livelihood at risk." David's words: "I don't want a Bulgarian dragging himself here and then leaving empty-handed just because I can't wait to set this idiot up. A person must earn a living. I'll wait. It will take a Bulgarian about 3 weeks to complete the work if he does not work on weekends. David knows a lot of people on site and at ACC headquarters, so he knows when the job is due. Now all I can do is sit back for 3 to 4 weeks and pretend I'm not a 7-year-old girl who can't wait for Christmas." Update 8. David was informed that the Bulgarian immediately began work. The materials were delivered to him. He did not bring them with him from Bulgaria. He did not order from British suppliers. There are 3 such suppliers, and only one of them has enough materials for this work, because they prepared them for David. It turns out that the Bulgarian is using the wrong materials. David wouldn't let this go unnoticed, even if he wasn't annoyed by Mr. Carter. He has a real passion for preserving all these buildings he works on, and is a stickler for historical accuracy. Now I just have to wait patiently for 3 to 4 weeks. David says that if modern materials are used, the job can be completed faster. Using 15th century technology, the work takes about X weeks to complete. I think I've gotten a little weird. When I called David under the wrong pretext, he immediately understood that I wanted to know the news again. Damn it, maybe I should wear a bodysuit so you can see and hear everything that's going on. If it's not difficult, add phone calls as well. That would be great. Well, you're a wit. Will it be possible to cover the camera when and bang your wife? Personally, I don't do these 2 things at the same time, but whoever likes it. So you do them separately? When you bang, so that after that she cleans everything with the sheet after you? Some of us are picky. A volley, neat guy, he hangs up. No goodbye or see you soon. English manners are not what they used to be. I know it doesn't look like it, but honestly, I have my own life. And just when I heard the news, the owner of a contracting firm was firing a subcontractor, not realizing that no one else could do the key work. Chaos broke out. Update 9. Lots of news. The Bulgarian finished work and went home 2 weeks ago. According to people who interacted with him, Stefan, that's the Bulgarian's name, turned out to be a good person and very hardworking. He worked 12-hour days and weekends to reduce living costs in the UK. After learning more about Stefan, David was glad he waited until he received his payment. David was already almost sure that Stefan had done the job incorrectly. He checked with 3 firms who are the only suppliers of one of Britain's rarest materials. None of them received an order for this object. Of course, it was possible that Stefan brought the material from abroad, but no one at the site saw the shipment of foreign materials. So, as planned, David contacted the local planning authority, the client, the architect, and the government's historic preservation authority. He explained his concerns and suggested the simplest and least disruptive way to test. He then waited for them to take care of the matter. It only took a couple of days. But honestly, I've never been more excited. An involvement from the architect, wrong method. Used wrong method and wrong materials. He used 19th century Bulgarian techniques instead of 15th century English ones, which were mandatory. The architect was furious. David said that he had never heard an architect swear, but this conversation was completely obscene. According to the architect, Mr. Carter has a new clique. And then the fun began. Inspectors inspected the facility and found a problem. I cannot specify details so that the building cannot be easily identified. Basically, the contractor destroyed part of the building. There was an internal structure that didn't look particularly important at first glance, but was essentially part of the roof. It was removed and replaced with a more modern, reliable support. But you can't do that. Neither the project manager, the new site manager, nor the staff were aware of the importance of this design. Guess who ordered it to be replaced with a cheap and quick option instead of the long and expensive restoration of the original? Of course it was Mr. Carter. The destruction of something at such an object is criminal offense, a crime for which you can get a prison sentence. Even if you don't go to jail, you face a huge fine. Now everyone in the company starts blaming each other, and Mr. Carter denied it. But the project manager has evidence in the form of email correspondence that it was he who did this. On Tuesday, the client ordered all contractor employees to leave the site. Now there is a full examination. The contractor will almost certainly be fired. The client has already given instructions to accept applications from new contractors. They will also file a claim against the contractor for the cost of repairing and replacing anything that was done incorrectly. According to the architects, the damage amounts to £800,000. The local planning department wrote to the contractor outlining exactly what had been done wrong and notifying him of plans for an inspection and the possibility of legal action. According to employees, on the same day the letter arrived, Mr. Carter ran to the lawyers. Within an hour of news of the letter spreading among employees, David received calls from 3 different people from ACC. Now we just have to wait for the following events. First, client verification. If it is confirmed that ACC has caused damage to the site, the client has the right to terminate the contract with the contractor. In this case, ACC will not receive payment and will be required to cover the huge cost of repairs. And the second, inspection by local authorities specialists in the preservation of historical sites. If it is determined that elements of historical value have been destroyed at the site, local authorities will initiate criminal proceedings against ACC and the person responsible for issuing the orders. David is very upset because the destroyed internal structure cannot be restored. As he said, "This wood has done its job properly for 400 years, until that damn idiot showed up. Now she's gone, and it will never happen again." He looks genuinely upset. I bet Mr. Carter now greatly regrets that he did not make his own coffee that day. Clarification and apology. Sorry, I was wrong. The letter sent to ACC did not contain a threat of legal action. It only stated the planning department's intention to send a specialist to inspect the building, especially the area affected by the changes. Sorry, obviously, if the case comes to prosecution, it will take a very long time. I sincerely apologize for misleading you. Like many others, I was too quick to grab the pitchforks and believe the worst. The combination of hearing only what you want and damaged phone led to the fact that when the story reached David, it already looked much more serious and larger than it actually was. Mr. Carter may indeed be held accountable, but if this happens, it will be in 6 months rather than in 6 days. It's already second adjustment since the beginning of this story. I promise to be more careful in future updates. My mistake, not David's. He warned me. Not everything that goes into your ears has to come right out of your mouth. You're too eager to feed the crowd. People may perceive you as a messiah, but it won't last long if you talk nonsense. He's right. As always, crap. As always, just always annoying. Update 10, requested information. Several people have asked what happened to the first site manager who was fired, but I couldn't answer until tonight. Me, David, Mark, and 2 others met in a pub. He definitely got a new job. ACC paid him compensation in lieu of 3 months severance pay for his dismissal. He was also given 12 vacation days. So, as a result, he received a little more than 3.5 months' salary in one sum. He was also allowed to keep his company car for 3 months. He said, "When I was fired, I was shaking like a dog in the rain, but my wife reminded me that I can receive my pension early and how much I hate this company, especially this smart-ass idiot." Then the architect called me about a job at a distribution center, and I stopped worrying. He has a free Christmas ahead and will start a new job with a slightly higher salary. The only downside is that the job is only guaranteed for 18 months. There is a high probability that the company will leave him if new projects appear, but this is not certain. He originally planned to apply for Mr. Carter is suing for unfair dismissal. Now he can't because he has nothing to lose financially. He said, "Obviously I'm glad they're losing money, but I was looking forward to kicking that bastard's ass in court." Now he is using his free time to make new sleighs and deer figurines. Yes, sleigh. They will be installed on the truck. His gang goes around town dressed up as elves and snowmen, with Santa Claus on his sleigh, loudly playing Christmas carols and collecting donations for charity. I've been dragged into this more than once. David promised whiskey. David said it wasn't worth it, but Mark replied, "Yorkshiremen keep their word, even in front of a bunch of soft-hearted Southerners like you. Besides, I don't want to risk spoiling this lucky streak, and the whiskey was half price." David and I simultaneously pointed at him and said, "A true Yorkshireman." For those who don't know, Yorkshiremen have a reputation. They speak directly and are extremely frugal with money. We left the pub and went to Mark's garage to drink whiskey and admire his work on the sleigh. If I tell you how good Cardew Gold Reserve, they will send me a bottle for free. Now I'm talking nonsense, because it's already 2:30 in the morning. It's time to sleep. Bye. Update. Karmic justice is just around the corner. Mr. Carter was questioned with passion. This does not mean that charges will necessarily be brought against him, but this suggests that the authorities are preparing for such a step. They did the same with the project manager, and next week they are going to interrogate the fired site manager. Mark is sure he has nothing to worry about. The decision to remove the roof supports was made after he was fired. He is confident that if he had been present during this illegal modification, Mr. Carter would try to pin the blame on him. As Mark himself put it, "This cowardly hunchback would blame everything on me to save his own skin." Fortunately, the project manager has proof in the form of correspondence that it was Mr. who gave the order. Carter. He tried to convince and bribe him not to hand over the correspondence to the people conducting the investigation. When that didn't work, he tried to threaten him. This backfired because the project manager not only ignored the threats, but also told investigators that Mr. Carter asked him to lose the letter. A lawyer friend of mine says that tampering with a witness and destroying evidence are crimes in themselves. Mr. Carter continues to dig himself a deeper hole. I will be extremely disappointed if he escapes legal consequences. Main news of the week: Mr. Carter is fired. David reported this yesterday after hearing from 4 different ACC employees. They couldn't wait to tell him. Our conversation then looked like this. How the hell is this possible? How can you fire the owner? Did he go to the mirror and say, "You are as useful as tomatoes in space"? Are you fired? David, Nornbother. You know he inherited the business from his father and uncle. Yes. Do you know that his brother and cousin own shares? Yes. Well, their joint share is more than 50%. That's why they fired him. According to Louise, finance manager, they are now in a panic. They were happy to leave Mr. Carter was at the helm while the business was making money. But now their goose that lays the golden eggs looks very sick. They are afraid that the loss of this contract, fines and penalties will kill the business. So they try to get the client, the building owner, to hire ACC again to complete the contract. Part of this plan involves convincing the owner that Mr. Carter never will not be related to the company. Obviously, they want to dump Mr. Carter into a meat grinder. Louise said that when Mr. Carter was fired, he screamed and made death threats. He had to be escorted outside the office. Now he calls employees, asks questions, and seems surprised that no one wants to help him. According to Louise, he really thinks that his employees love him and want to be loyal to him. She said, "This person lives in some outside world." 1. He must be furious. How I wish I could have seen that idiot's face at that moment. David. There is something else, but I can't tell you because I promised the person who told me this to keep it a secret. You damn troll! How big does this matter? Huge. A turning point. I wish I could tell you because the news almost made me feel excited. Damn it. It must be something grandiose if it could make even this ugly appendage do anything other than hang in place like the last chicken on the counter. Your wife must have been delighted. What a drama. She thinks I should tell her what I was told in confidence. She thinks I should share everything with her because we are married. I explained that it was not my secret to divulge. I was hoping to hear, "I appreciate your honesty, dear husband." But no, now I have an angry wife who thinks I'm a fool. It looks like it will take a couple of months for this exciting news to be revealed, so don't hold your breath. The owner of the building conducted an inspection. As expected, 2 areas of the work turned out to be unusable, the damaged area and the part that David should have done, but Stefan did. They are extremely unhappy. When protected buildings are damaged, local authorities usually assume that the owners were trying to save money. But in this case, it is an old and respected organization dedicated to the preservation of important buildings. They weren't used to being accused of something dubious, and they didn't really like having to prove that they weren't involved in the damage to the building. David said, "It looks like they have completely written off ACC because they have already put out a call for tenders among several contractors who specialize in restoration." He then said a bunch of jargon that I didn't understand. To put it simply, they asked several companies to name the price for the work. This is an overly simplistic description, but I don't have the time or crayons to explain everything. So, okay, let's say they're asking for a price for the job. Condescending. I was hoping this story would reach a climax where Mr. Carter will suffer big time, but she was simply deflated waiting to see what legal action would be taken. Real life drags on painfully slowly. January 21st. Hello, this is Mark's wife. This idiot asked me to apologize to you for his silence. He was involved in a car accident on January 7th. We are confident that he will make a full recovery, but for now he will be offline. I said he's just an overweight toad, but he's an obsessive madman who doesn't like to let people down, so I promised to explain to everyone why he didn't finish talking about something they probably didn't care about anyway. February 3rd. Hello, it's Mark's wife again. Thank you all for your well wishes. I will answer the 3 most frequently asked questions. What happened to Mark? His car was waiting in line to exit the freeway when a large truck rear-ended it. His car was pinned between this truck and another truck ahead. He suffered several fractures, including the eye socket and cheekbone, the radius, ulna, and forearm, 4 bones in the left hand, the right tibia and fibula, the lower part of the leg, 4 ribs, one of which punctured the left lung. There is damage to the central vision of the left eye, which we hope is temporary. There is also damage to the tendons in his right hand, which will require another operation. Lots of cuts, 112 stitches in total. It doesn't look good, but there's a chance he can recover without any permanent damage. If it were me, I wouldn't have been able to cope. But Mark has always been incredibly resilient since I've known him. When I first arrived at the hospital and saw him lying in bed with wires and tubes, unable to speak, I was in despair. But he made me laugh within minutes. He always knows what to say. His main concern right now is that he can't use his hands. When it updates the history, it may take some time. I could ask his friend, whom he calls David, to update it. But I definitely won't be able to tell the story the way Mark does. Obviously, I'm biased, but I think Mark is the funniest person I've ever met. When he and David start talking, I laugh until I cry. Now I told him to forget about everything except recovery. But if this starts to bother him, I offered to play the role of secretary, and he could dictate the story to me. I know he will finish it. He always finishes what he starts. I wish I had even a 1/10 of his self-discipline. Is it okay to send him cards, gifts, or money for medical bills or lost wages? Thank you very much for such suggestions, but it is not necessary. We're in the UK, so luckily our healthcare is free. He doesn't want anyone's money. If anyone feels the need to do something, there is a charity that we have been supporting for a long time, called Macmillan Cancer Support. They provide assistance to people suffering from cancer and are always grateful for any amount, large or small. Final update, in 2 months. This account belonged to my husband, Mark. He was writing a story about his friend David and business owner, whom he called Mr. Carter. Mark was updating this story until he was involved in a car accident in January. Then he asked me to inform everyone that he was injured and promised to continue the story as soon as he recovered. Unfortunately, a little over a week after my last comment, Mark passed away. Everyone thought he was recovering, but without any warning, he suddenly lost consciousness and died very quickly. The doctors did everything they could to save him, but his aorta ruptured. They said it was likely damaged in the accident, which is not uncommon in such cases. Sorry I didn't update the story sooner. but to be honest, I completely forgot about it. It wasn't until I went back to reread Mark's words that I saw how many people were waiting for him to finish his story, thanks to the hundreds of people who left messages wishing him well. For Mark, forgive me for ignoring you for so long, but for the last 3 months I have been in a state of numbness. Mark definitely wouldn't approve of me leaving everyone in the dark, and would probably scold me for it. A huge thank you to everyone who donated to Macmillan Cancer Support. I can't express how grateful I am for your kind words. I cried for hours. It's hard to explain what tears of joy feel like when you lose someone. I think those who have lost loved ones will understand. Thanks to your messages and comments, much of today has been filled with tears of joy. Your words made me remember all the wonderful qualities about Mark and the reasons why I loved him so much. I started writing this update and abandoned it about 8 times before I finally plucked up the courage. I'm so glad I did it. Also, I realized that I wanted to do something else, something that Mark would have wanted. He always finished what he started. I'm going to talk to his friends and find out what happened. I already know something, but I will try to update the information about everyone involved in the story. I warn you in advance, this will not be like Mark's stories. These will be just facts. I don't have any of his talent for storytelling, but it is obvious that many were waiting for the story to end. Simple facts that you have to accept. Please be lenient. I'm going to talk to the man he called David. He has been a real support for me this year. I hope he can tell me everything. That's it. I'll write an update as soon as I can. Thank you all so much. You can't even imagine how much this helped me. May 25th. Today, I woke up angry and I can't get rid of this feeling. Today is a day off in England, and I keep thinking about what Mark and I would do if he were here. He never wasted holidays. I'm angry because I lost the best person in my life just because some selfish idiot couldn't wait to respond to a text message. I cannot come to terms with this stupidity and injustice. This person may go to prison, but only for a few years, and nothing will bring my Mark back. Sorry, I just needed to blow off some steam. Please, please, please don't use your phone while you're driving, and don't tolerate it if you see others doing it. June 3rd. I would like to mention 2 things. First, let me thank everyone who left comments. Your wonderful words about Mark lifted my spirits. I didn't expect this outcome. That's why it took me so long to tell you that Mark was no more. But you helped. Yes, your words were so touching that I started crying again, which happened dozens of times while I read these beautiful messages. Secondly, let me apologize for not responding to every comment yet. Some days I feel like I could talk about Mark all day. Other days I can't even think about him without losing my temper. If I did not respond to your comment, this does not mean that I did not read it. I've read them all. It was just that sometimes I was in a bad state and couldn't answer. But I will answer everyone eventually, like I did with the thank you cards after his funeral. Finishing what you start is one of the many good habits I learned from Mark. I'd love to hear him call me love in Welsh again. July 27th, 3 a.m. I can't sleep again, and it occurred to me that I could finally update this story. What happened to each of the people Mark wrote about? These will be just facts. Site manager. He began working as planned on a new distribution center construction project. Mark has already mentioned that the site manager and David were unhappy that the contract was fixed for 18 months and concluded with him as self-employed. This was a disadvantage compared to the employee's position, but this was before the coronavirus pandemic. After it began, most employees were fired or sent on leave without pay, but because of the contract, the company was obligated to continue paying the site manager his full salary. What he considered a disadvantage ended up being his salvation. Mr. Carter. The last thing David told me about him was that he was forced to give up his share of the business and now no longer owns a third company. He was forced to sign an agreement on personal liability for his assets in case his total debts exceeded the value of the company. As I understand it, this means that if, for example, the total debt caused by Mr. Carter. If there is more than the company can pay, he will have to make up the difference, even if it means losing his home. He was forced to give up his share because the company could not continue until he was removed. He needs the company to continue to function in order to pay for the lawyers. Charges have not yet been brought against him, but this is almost inevitable. The investigation and preparation before filing charges takes a lot of time. This is due to the need to be prepared for trial as soon as he is accused. It also became known that in 2011, he had already received a warning for similar, but much less serious damage to a protected building. David reported that during the investigation, local authorities discovered some violations and referred the matter to the tax service. Now Mr. Carter is also under investigation for VAT fraud. One of the first comments on Mark's story was, "Expensive cup of coffee." This is probably the kindest thing that can be said about the situation. As for the big news about Mr. Carter, there were rumors of allegations of, shall we say, harassment against one of the assistants in the ACC offices, as well as other employees. However, it turned out that this was done by the former financial director and not by Mr. Carter. And even then, this happened with only one employee. The rest turned out to be rumors. David, financially and in work. David is probably one of the few who have been largely unaffected by the COVID-19 pandemic. He works alone and is not affected by social distancing issues. Therefore, it continues to work almost as usual. In fact, he says the job has become even easier because, in his words, the usual idiots are no longer tripping over my equipment or sticking boards into my finished work. However, on a personal level, things are not going so well for David. Of everyone except his relatives, he takes Mark's death the worst. He tries not to show it to me. When he is near, he is my support. He literally saved me from myself. He's one of 3 people I feel like I can really open up with when talking about Mark. Or so I thought. Last week I spoke with David's wife. She was very kind and sympathetic. I had to tell me to slow down a little in communicating with David. He seems strong to me, but according to her, it destroys him. Of course, I knew that he and Mark were good friends, but she said that David was taking Mark's death very hard. During their entire marriage, she saw him cry only once, when their dog died. He didn't even cry when his parents died. She says he seems lost now and has cried several times already. The hardest thing for me was hearing that he cries after seeing me. I feel terrible. It's obvious he's going through grief too, but I didn't realize how much I was putting on him. I'm going to be more careful and stop using it to vent all my pain. I wish she had told me this earlier, or maybe I should have noticed it myself, instead of being so focused on my own grief. That's all I know at the moment. Everyone is waiting to find out what Mr. will be accused of. Carter, if he is found guilty of damaging protected buildings, he could go to prison. If he commits VAT fraud, he will almost certainly go to prison. In any case, the fine will be 6 figures. David joked that it would be interesting to see if he liked prison coffee. He has a peculiar sense of humor. July 27th, 5:30 a.m. I'm watching a video from our wedding. I thought it would console me, but now I feel like I was run over by a bus. Mark's speech completely broke me. He talked about how we met and how he came back to the house he made with other Marines. One of them asked Mark, "What's the joke? Why are you smiling again? Something funny? Come on, tell me." Mark said he couldn't and wouldn't explain. He just couldn't stop smiling. Every time I thought about our date, he said he felt this way every time he thought about me. On our wedding day, these words made me smile and tear up, but this morning they destroyed me. I don't think the pain is getting any better. It seems to me that it is only getting stronger. I can't stand it. I feel it inside me and I can't stop it. All I can think about is if I can't get him back, I'd like to be in that car with him. He was an atheist and always said, "This is all the time you have, so don't you dare waste it." So he wouldn't approve if I hurt myself. So I won't be able to do this. It is simply impossible to live with such pain. I just want it to stop. Sorry for keeping this going. I'm afraid to say this to people I know because they worry. Writing here is like shouting into a diary. I apologize to everyone. I'll try to pull myself together. But I miss him so much. And I can't stop this pain. I don't know what to do. 31 August. Yesterday was our anniversary. I was afraid of this day. But when he arrived, he turned out to be somehow empty. I watched our wedding video. I cried, responded to a few messages, and suddenly realized that all the happiness I had ever experienced in my life had already happened and ended. Everything I try to do in the future will be overshadowed by the thoughts, Mark should be here, but he's not there. Everything from this moment until the very end will be simply existence, just by breathing, just watching the days go by. It seems so pointless without Mark. I don't know if I can continue writing. Thanks to everyone who offered their help. You are wonderful people. Hold on to those you love as if you might lose them tomorrow. Don't do like me. Don't think you can live in your little bubble of heaven forever. Some careless idiot can take away everything you love in an instant, leaving you with emptiness ahead. Farewell. Well, a very touching story. Be sure to write in the comments what you think about it. I think you, like me, absolutely did not expect such an unpredictable ending. I don't know what ultimately happened to the author's wife, but the thoughts, of course, are the worst. Thank you for watching this video to the end. Watch our previous video here. Also subscribe to the channel so as not to miss new videos of this kind. And good luck to you. Hold on to your loved ones.